Welcome to Ask Caleffi, the podcast that dives into real-life problems that plumbing and HVAC technicians face in the field. We're your hosts from the Caleffi Tech Support Team. I'm Greg Tubbs.
And I'm Dan Furcus. Welcome. We look forward to sharing some stories from our tech calls and using our background and expertise to make your days a little easier.
Hey there, welcome back to the Ask Caleffi podcast. I'm your host, Greg Tubbs, and with me is Dan Furcus. How are we doing, Dan?
Doing good today, Greg. How are you doing?
Oh, can't complain.
Yeah, we have a great guest today.
We certainly do. Our very own Bob Hot Rod Rohr.
Yeah, welcome, Bob.
Well, thanks for having me, gentlemen.
Wow, use that term loosely.
Right, exactly.
So today, solar is on our mind. We're going to talk solar.
Okay, should be.
Yeah. Why should we talk solar?
Well, I think there's going to be another resurgence, and I've gone through this, I think, 4 times in my lifetime, where it kind of solar thermal fades away and then it comes back. You know, it's an oil embargo or, you know, something's going on in the world that seems to drive it. Now it seems to be this push for electrification and to get off of fossil fuels a little bit. So, in fact, I was talking to a local wholesaler yesterday, and he said he's ordering solar thermal panels in again, and it's been selling, he said, 2 jobs last month, and he just placed another order. So I think, you know, people are going to look for some other options. You know, if you're worried about having enough electricity in your basement or wherever, maybe some solar thermal assist is another option. So, yeah, I'm thinking we might see a little bit more activity again.
You know, you're right. It is interesting because it has come and gone a number of times. I recall, you know, probably back in the, you know, mid or upper 2000s where it was very popular, and tax credits and rebates were a big incentive at that point. And I think you're right now with electrification and that transfer towards that. I think you're going to start to see that pick up again.
Yeah, and there was a driver, I think, what was it, when we had the oil embargo years and years ago, that was one of the drivers, and there was one even earlier than that, and I don't remember what the situation was. But, you know, when we were, when Caleffi was really promoting it there, would you say the mid or early 2000s, there was really 3 things that lined up perfectly to make it work, like a perfect storm, if you will. It was the incentives, it was awareness. We had an administration that was pushing renewable energy, and the tax credits. You know, the federal tax credit was 30% there, was pretty good, and a lot of states also had incentives. So I think what it came down to is if you could get 50% of the cost of it through different incentives or breaks or whatever it might be, the homeowner would say yes to something that would maybe have a 7 to 10 year payback. But, you know, when those things started drying up and the price of fuel came down, you know, it just left everybody's mind, and it's, you know, the sales kind of slumped on it again. So it's, you know, it's interesting to see what the drivers will be this time, but I think it's going to see a little bit of a resurgence, nothing like we had maybe before, but who knows? I mean, it's, you know, if we had a crystal ball, we wouldn't be sitting here, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. With that push towards electrification, again, the incentives are coming back for solar. A lot of it is, you know, photovoltaic. I mean, right now you think a lot about the photovoltaic producing electricity, but if you can offset your water heating or space heating costs with solar thermal, that there's a lot to be gained there as well.
Yeah, why not? I mean, everything is, again, it'll be price driven, but certainly everybody uses hot water in their home pretty much every day, I would think. So there's definitely a spot for it, and not to mention, you know, the big commercial industrial plants that need lots of hot water on a given day, or, you know, maybe for some of their processes in their plant or something. That market, you know, again, if the incentives look pretty good, you'll see some of those factories looking at it again, I predict.
Well, and with the possible increase of more systems being sold and maybe being recommissioned or repaired, it's going to be tough finding good help or good contractors. Like, I know for a fact we're always getting phone calls. Yeah, my old contractor that installed this, you know, the Caleffi product in particular, or whoever's, they're no longer around, or they just quit doing it.
Yeah, what qualifications are required to become a solar installer? Do you know of any?
Well, you know, I think it's state by state and even, you know, city by city if they require, number one, a permit be pulled and then an inspection. The problem, as you mentioned, who's going to do the inspection? There's nobody familiar with it on most of these roads. And in fact, this morning I was looking around and actually NAPSET which stands for North American Board of Certified Energy Providers, has 2 courses still available: solar thermal and also a solar thermal inspector's course. So if somebody did want to, get certified by any kind of body, that's one. SEI, Solar Energy International, still has some solar thermal training courses. But yeah, and as far as do you need a plumber to put it in, I mean, no, not really. It could be an HVAC guy, it could be a hydronics guy. But, again, your city might require that if you touch the domestic water, an incoming water line or something like that to tie it in, you might have to pull a plumbing permit or at least have a plumber there to do that. So I don't know. I can't, say for everybody, for every area that's going to require a plumber, but in some jurisdictions it may, and a permit.
Oh, I'm sure it will, because depending on what the application of the solar thermal is. I mean, if it's tying in to provide space heating, there you're probably having a HVAC or heating contractor doing it. You may not have a licensed plumber, but if it's tying in for domestic, that's probably where that's going to cross that line and require that license.
Yeah, I agree. And then the other thing too is to get the rebate, you had to have a receipt from somebody that put it in. So
sure. So it had to be a licensed contractor of some sort.
Yeah, you got to be a contractor of some sort, and you had the SRCC number off the equipment, off the panels, and off the package that we used to provide, and then have a receipt to turn into your tax accountant, or if you do your own taxes, you had to submit all that together. So by default, you would have somebody involved, a plumber, or HVAC guy that probably went to a wholesaler to buy the components. So you'd have kind of a track record of all the money, where it went and who put it in. So
yeah. I recall back in the day, one project I worked on, it was a large home in the Wisconsin area. And at that point, that customer had solar thermal installed. We were installing the boiler. Plumber was putting in the water heater. So, at that point, that homeowner had 3 different contractors touching that system. He had a solar contractor putting in the solar thermal. We put in the boiler, and the plumber set the water heater, and then at some point we all had to tie them together.
Yeah. Well, and there's little pockets of where there's activity, and wherever you see that activity, you'll see usually a group or a certification. Like in Wisconsin there, you have Greg, you and I went to the Midwest Energy.
We did.
There one year, and they still do classes and certification. I don't know what that means, or I know it helped with some of the Wisconsin state incentives. If you had somebody that was certified to put it in, it puts you into a different box or category, I suppose. So, and the same thing, California, the Sun Belt, states where it's still viable. I mean, there's some states that require, like the state of Hawaii, you have to put solar thermal on every new building. So I'm sure there's a lot of people involved there, and the inspectors are probably up to speed there. So there's going to be pockets of it. And it's sometimes where you least expect it. Like New Jersey is like in the top 5 of solar, both for PV, as you mentioned, Dan, and also solar thermal, which who would have guessed that it would have been an eastern city like that. It's usually the Southwest, New Mexico, Arizona, California, that area. But it can be anywhere. And also North Carolina, they've always had a good program there. FSEC and different programs in around the Charlotte area. There's been a kind of a band of people promoting solar thermal, and that's more of the big commercial stuff comes out of there, like process heat and some of those reflective collectors that can get you up to like steam that you could drive a turbine or maybe run a little refrigeration cycle off it or something like that.
Yeah, I know here in Wisconsin you talked about state incentives. I remember back in the mid-2000s when there was the big push here, there was the federal incentive of 30%, and then Wisconsin had a 30% state incentive.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a pretty good incentive towards the solar thermal. I know the state incentive has changed a bit, but still.
Yeah, the federal one's notching down. I think it goes down to 20-some% this year. They've been kind of gradually phasing out. But then again, it looks like they're going to have another a go-around of incentive packages starting in January. I think it's more for energy upgrades and heat pumps and stuff like that. So we're not sure yet if there's going to be a solar thermal or solar PV carve-out in that one that's supposed to go in effect sometimes after the first of the year. So, yeah, that has a lot to do with people saying yes is the money. It's always the money, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, if you're a homeowner that is thinking about solar thermal, how do you evaluate the site? I mean, how do you to see if you're actually a good candidate?
Yeah, and that's a good question. In fact, I was looking into that again today. There are some apps that you can get for your phone. In fact, I've got one. It's was from one of the solar PV manufacturers, but it works for thermal. And you actually just take your phone up on the roof and just lay it right on the roof. And it tells you the pitch of the roof and how much energy at that pitch and your location you put in there. And it just gives you, spits it out. It's usually in watts or kilowatts, which you can convert to BTUs if it's going to be a solar thermal. So I think I saw 4 or 5 different apps in the store today that you can do that. And then of course you can buy programs, bigger programs like T-Sol. It's a German program that'll do all the, the analysis. It'll do the piping for you. It'll do the payback on it if you put in what it costs and if you finance it. So there's ways you can figure all that out before you go. And, some of them, when you click on them, they're companies that want to come out and sell you something. Mostly the PV people seem to be like water softener salesmen. They just want to get to your door.
Right. And then, I don't know how many flyers we get in the mail, or we'll get a door hanger on the door for PV.
Yeah, and then they try and reel you in. But another place you can go is the NREL, which is National Renewable Energy Lab in Golden, Colorado is I think their main location. And they've got a sizer that the homeowner can use. You plug in your location and a little bit of information, maybe the size of your family and stuff like that. It'll give you some simulations or give you some ideas of what's doable. But, the key I think we found at Caleffi was 50%. If you can cover 50% of the load for a residential application, it works pretty good. And I think in California, to get the certain energy credits, you have to prove with one of these simulation programs that it's covering a percentage, and I think it's 50% of your domestic hot water load to be in line for the rebate money from the state there. So, the people want to make sure that it's sized properly and somebody put some energy into doing it right. So,
well, and I think the thing is too, you want to make sure that if you're going to make the investment, not only from a homeowner, but if you're going to give, incentives back for making the investment into solar thermal, you have to know that you're recovering something out of it. You have to know that it's reducing that energy load on the system, or on the grid, I should say.
Yeah, and the PV people are great at that. That's how they sell it. Well, here's your bill today. This is what we project the rate's going to be in 10 years from now. And this is the percentage that we can offset or save or whatever. And then, some of the people even try and put a battery storage in that. So they say, okay, sell it on that. What if the power browns out or goes out with all these people getting online with air conditioners? Now you've got a little bit of a self-sufficiency, if you will. And some people are motivated by that regardless of the cost. And then some people just like to see it on their roof just to be, players, they say, oh yeah, I'm a renewable guy, and they don't even know if it's working. In some cases, we've been on solar thermal jobs that have been unplugged, and the homeowner didn't even know that. So it was just up there because they liked it. But I got a piece on my house, and I've got an app on my phone. Anytime I can look and tells me what it's doing and how much money it's saving me, and it gives you all that data in real time.
Everybody, I guess, and I recall back in the day with selling geothermal systems as well, that, is when solar was popular, everyone has their different motive for buying it. Some people want to buy it to reduce their energy costs. People want to buy it to reduce their carbon footprint. Everybody has their personal reason for wanting that system.
Yeah, and that's fine. It's like buying a vehicle or anything else. Some people like all the, bells and whistles, and other people want the tradesman special. Just give me a truck that gets me from A to B. So,
right.
But we would like to certainly help, fill that need. We still have some Caleffi components. I think we've got some pump stations and high temperature components. So we're still got one foot in the door anyways.
Right.
We certainly do.
Have you seen efficiencies of the panels change a lot over the years? If you look at, obviously the 4 stages that we talked about of solar going, back to maybe the late 70s to today, you're going to see efficiency gains. But how are the panels today?
Yeah, I don't see that a lot's changed. People have tried like double pane glass, which would, reduce some of the loss from the front, but then it took more energy to go through the double pane and the cost of manufacturing and the weight. So that kind of went away. But, really the efficiency of the collector is driven by the operating condition that you put it under. If you're trying to get high temperature water on a day like today where it's cold and windy outside, you're probably down in the 20% efficiency. But you can get up into the 90s, and an example of that would be like a swimming pool heater where it's 80 degrees outside and you're just trying to get your water to 83 or 85. Well, almost no losses from the collector. So you're getting in the 90% efficiency on that application. So for a residential heating system, you'd want to have like a low temperature radiant system, maybe needing 100, 110 degree water. Then you can drive that efficiency up. And you can find that information out actually in two of our hydronics issues. I'll show you that calculation, how you can figure the efficiency based on, the operating temperature condition that you're putting the collector under is what's going to give it to you. But yeah, I mean, far away better than PV. I mean, yeah, there's some better PV now. They're getting up in the high 20%, I think, with some of the new modules. But I mean, solar thermal, you should be able to get 50 and above, even on a domestic water at, say 120, 140 degree operating conditions. So that way it looks pretty good on efficiency. But
I suppose it kind of works under that law of thermodynamics. So your efficiency is going to change as your temperatures change. Similar to a heat pump. Similar to air to water heat pump. As the temperatures change, ambient air temperature and water temperature parameters change, your efficiency is going to change with it.
Yeah, and the same with geothermal. Some of those loops where they undersize the loop field and they saturate the ground temperature, efficiency goes way off because of, it's too hot or too cold depending on what mode you're in. So, yeah, it's all about knowing what the application is and, do some number crunching. I mean, really, the same as a heating system, you should always do a heat load calculation before you sell somebody a boiler or a furnace even, or an air conditioner if you're doing a load calc, just to know what the job at hand is. But, there's a few applications for residential where it makes sense. If you have a large family, if you use a lot of hot water for whatever reason, maybe you got a big soaking tub that you use every night or something like that. It's all driven by the, having a good, consistent load on it. It doesn't have to be a big load, but a consistent load. So every day, whatever it's putting out, you can be using that. It didn't work out so well on vacation homes where people would put it on these trophy homes out in the mountains thinking, again, making a statement. And then they would just sit up there and stagnate all day long because nobody was living there using the hot water. Right. So
it just cooks whatever. If you got the glycol in the panels, it's cooking the glycol and it's never getting run through the heat exchanger of the tank.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what you recover out of it is going to be what your load is. You're exactly right. I mean, you take a home with 6 people living in it compared to a home with 2 people living in it, and your reward from that solar thermal is going to be different.
Yeah, and there's some sweetheart loads out there, and we were involved with a couple there in Wisconsin, like that Kalahari Resort. I mean, talk about a perfect application. They've got swimming pools inside and outside. It's open year-round. They've got restaurants. They've got hotel rooms. They've got a laundromat or laundry on the facility there. So probably every minute of the day, somewhere there's a hot water, faucet running in that property. So they're the number. I mean, I forget what they projected, less than 5-year payback on that with all the incentives and all the load they had on it. And one other one that was kind of interesting, Jim Erdley was involved with this up in Michigan. It was an ice skating rink, and they do fill Zambonis with warm water because warm water makes better ice than cold water. Mm-hmm. And so this little facility up there just said, well, let's put some solar thermal on. Every time we fill the Zamboni with 350 gallons of hot water, why don't we cover some of that load? And they skate every day, or they refinish the ice every day anyway. So I thought that was kind of, whoever thought of it, that was a pretty good application for it. So the return on that was probably, pretty good.
That's really thinking outside the box on that application.
Yeah.
Fill up the Zamboni, eh?
Yeah. So, but yeah, bigger, applications for process plants or something like that. There's the numbers work out much better when you've got that. It's like we were talking about the cogen units here a while ago with one of our podcaster webinars. And, that too is thermally driven. Unless you have something to do with the heat from the exhaust and the generator and everything, or the coolant coming off that, the numbers don't pencil out. And the same thing with the solar. If you're not using that somewhere on a regular basis, it's, you're kind of spinning your wheels.
Yeah, so we see the PV definitely taking off, and I see even our local utility company offering it to their customers and offering to finance it for their customers. Do you think we're going to see anything like that come out with solar thermal? Or
I don't know. I'd like to say yes, but I don't know if they're keying into that as, low-hanging fruit like the PV is. The PV, people understand they use lights and they want to charge their electric vehicles or something like that. It's a pretty good sell. And, Rocky Mountain Power, my provider here, came to me with the same, like I said, a deal like that. And they were more interested in everybody having batteries. And so, we had the person come out and gave us a spiel and stuff like that. And they say, yeah, we'll get back to you. And then another guy comes by and says, well, you got to read the fine print on those power company ones, because they'll give you the batteries, $10,000 worth of batteries they're going to give me, but they want to use your batteries. So if they get a brownout condition, they pull every neighbor, that has a battery bank. They're pulling your juice.
Really?
Put in, they're going to take put into their grid because they're
so they're pulling from your batteries and feeding it back into the grid.
Exactly.
Really?
And it was like a 5-year contract that you had to sign with them, where they can pull from your batteries if they need to. They're not going to do it every day, but when they hit those brownout conditions where they can't keep up with the loads, they're going to start pulling backwards out of the bank of batteries. So they're just putting little power storage stations all across their network, across their utility grid.
In every neighborhood, actually, there's a power storage unit.
Yeah, exactly. Which, from their perspective, that's a great deal. And for the homeowner, if you're not that worried about the power going out and having to use it, then maybe that's not too bad a deal. So yeah, you got to be careful what the salesmen are selling you. But the PV, certainly. I mean, 7 houses on my street here, and 5 of them have PV and have had it for years. So, they grabbed it when the state rebates were great and the federal was still at its highest number. And then, like I say, Rocky Mountain Power had some incentives too. So they got 3 different incentives on it, and they got grandfathered in. Unfortunately, I was late to the game by a year, and I didn't get grandfathered in as far as the selling back to the power company at par. Whatever they pay, they get back as a credit. You don't get money, but mine, I think I get like 3 or 5 cents back, and I pay 12. So still better than a poke in the eye, I guess.
Yeah.
Take what you can get.
I'm definitely starting to see more solar panels go up on roofs in my neighborhood as well. So
certainly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an easier sell with electrification, scare movement, whatever you want to call it. So, yeah, the thermal's going to have to find that niche. And those people have a lot more money. But, I mean, you look at the players in that industry, big name electronic companies. So they've got the marketing dollars to go out and promote that and say, well, yeah, if we're worried about being able to charge your Tesla tonight, well, here's the solution for it. So I don't know that the thermal industry has ever had, the deep pockets to go out and promote it like that to get people excited about it. So I think it's always going to be a little bit of an underground technology, the thermal side of it.
Yeah, I think you're right. It just doesn't have that leverage, to heat your, we're going to heat your domestic hot water. Doesn't carry the same leverage as your home.
Yeah, powering your home or being able to heat your entire home effectively.
But definitely rewards there on the space heating and domestic side. With
probably the biggest seller for solar thermal is, and always will be, is the pool heating. I mean, you remember flying into Florida for the Orlando thing last year. I mean, every 5th or 8th roof as you look out the plane had some kind of solar. If it had a pool, it had a thermal.
Yeah, they had a solar mat or something on it that they would pump the water through from the pool.
Exactly, just a EPDM mat up on the roof. And again, running high 90% efficiencies because the ambient temperature is close to the pool temperature. So that probably makes a lot of sense if you have to pay for gas or electricity to heat that. I can't imagine it's cheap in Florida for power.
No,
I can't imagine.
Well, I think we covered solar pretty well, and then some.
Yeah, I think we learned a lot today.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, I hope the listeners at least consider it, look at it, and see. I mean, if you're a hydronics guy, it makes sense. You've got the technology and the knowledge to put it in. It's just pipes and pumps, really, at the end of the day.
Right.
It's the same. Just the controller's a little unique, but other than that, it's a pretty simple.
It's basically trying to understand differential controllers.
Yeah, and that's really all it is.
Yep.
I mean, it's just controlling different systems based on temperature differentials.
Yeah. That's just watch 2 temperatures and yes or no. Simple. So, well, thanks for bringing up this topic and
it's something we've been wanting to get on, and I know you have such a background with it. We appreciate you taking the time to come on with us.
Yeah, maybe we revisit it again and maybe talk more about it on the troubleshooting side and get it into some of the jobs maybe you've been involved with.
Yes, for people that have a system or have had a system that isn't working, that we could chat a little bit about that. There's actually companies out there. What was the company I worked with in New Mexico during our heyday in the solar here in the 2000s? It was Orphan Solar, they called it. And that's what they did is they went out and worked on these systems where the companies went out of business and you can't find parts or fittings or controllers. And that's what they specialized. It was just 2 guys down there just going around working on solar thermal systems and trying to keep them revived and going. And I know a couple of guys in Colorado that do the same thing on those older systems, just kind of specialize in that.
Yeah, and I suppose when we talk about solar coming and going a few times and now getting more popular again, you're going to find a number of those orphan systems out there that need someone to step in. So I know we get calls now and then.
We do. Greg
mentioned it. People looking for contractors to take care of them.
Yeah, we're looking for fittings, a special metric fitting, because they came in from Europe and they can't find a connector for it, or a nut in a tailpiece or something. So,
all right,
you got it. Well, that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in.
Yep. Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for tuning in. If you ever need help,
please feel free to contact our tech support team anytime at techsupport.us@caleffi.com.
or call us during our business hours at 7:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Central Time at 414-238-2360.